It's taking a look at the language you're using for yourself about the only thing that keeps you in business and changing your perception around selling and sales that something is wrong with it or bad and seeing it through a different lens. And you see how sales is helping and serving and selling and guiding and leading. It's getting people what they need or want. And if you can't give it to them, they're going to someone else.
Welcome to Sales Made Easy, a podcast for business and personal growth. Join Harry Spaight, author of Selling with Dignity, as he hosts sales experts and business owners who share their journeys of personal growth and business success. Now, here's your host, Harry.
Oh, we're in for a treat, ladies and gentlemen. We have a good friend of mine, Liz Wendling, joining us on the Sales Made Easy podcast. And if you don't know Liz, well, this lady is driven by the mantra, it's not what you sell, it's how you sell that matters. We're going to talk a little bit about language today. For those of us who speak English, we might be using some of the wrong words. Liz is also an author of a couple of books, actually 6, but her most recent 2 are The Heart of Authentic Selling and Sell Without Selling Your Soul. I have a copy of that
Oh,
right
yay.
here. I was kind of going through it. I even have notes.
All
We
right.
might talk a little bit about selling without selling your soul. So, Liz, what is the good word today?
I have a good word is when I saw you, that you were one of my calls today, I got so excited. I knew we were meeting in December, but I was like, today is the day. It's been too long. So I'm excited to be here and chat with you.
It's funny, but I've reached out to a few people, and it's like me in June as a junior in high school, trying to get up courage to ask for a date is the way I've approached some of these guests. You being one of them. It's like, will you please go out with me? Will you please join me? I don't even know what to say. I was so nervous. Liz asked me like where I lived, and instead of saying I live outside of Orlando, I said I live outside of Florida. She gave me the puzzled look, like, "What's wrong with you?" It's like I got a little Liz Wendling jitters right now.
Oh, that's funny. Well, we've relaxed and got into a nice conversation before this, so I am ready for whatever you want to talk about.
All right, good deal. So we're talking sales, all things selling today. And one of the topics that you and I were just chatting about, I think is pretty common, is that I'm around a lot of people who are starting a business, consultants who've never really taken a deep dive in sales. And I know, like the title of your book, Sell Without Selling Your Soul, is a lot of people don't like the idea of looking, smelling, acting like a salesperson. So they avoid it completely, suffers. So let's talk a little bit about that, how people can become a little bit better in selling without necessarily salesy. So where would you like to go with that?
Well, where my mind goes to right away is most people will tell me they love what they do, but they hate to sell. And those are their exact words. They use hate for the only thing in their business that keeps them in business. So they hate money. That means they hate to thrive. That means they hate to go to the bank. That means they hate to help people. That means they hate to help people make decisions in a time of need. So they're making it all about themselves. I would hate it too if I was that self-serving.
Mm.
So what I teach people is how to stop being so self-serving and say, I hate it. I don't like how I feel. I don't like when I have to articulate my value or talk to people about what I do. I say, well, then stop making it about you and turn the focus on the person that you're talking to. So if you say anything that resembles that, that's a start right there, that you are putting the focus on yourself versus the client. And for everybody out there who says, oh, I'm client centric, I'm all about the client, I do everything for my clients. The minute you start talking with that language of I don't like it or I don't like how I feel in it, you have just become incongruent and completely out of integrity. So it's taking a look at the language you're using for yourself about the only thing that keeps you in business and changing your perception around selling and sales that something is wrong with it or bad, and putting a different lens, seeing it through a different lens. And you see how sales is helping and serving and selling and guiding and leading. It's getting people what they need or want. And if you can't give it to them, they're going to someone else. So I'll get off my soapbox on that
Yeah,
one.
really. I mean, do you have any opinion on this or? Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And I'm going to be completely open here is that I've said some of those same things. It's not like those of us who've been in sales forever don't have days where we're like, what am I doing?
Right.
It's not like we don't have streaks of what seems like everything that can go wrong does. Nobody is buying anything that we're selling. We're wondering what we done to the universe. So we do have these thoughts, but I absolutely love how you basically are saying, snap out of it,
That's it.
get
Yep.
over it.
Yep.
Because like I was just talking to someone recently and they said, I don't really have time to sell. And they, they're in business. Their
Yep.
business is not thriving. I mean, if it was thriving and they really didn't have, they need clients. So, saying you don't have time for it is, to me, is clearly there's a deeper reason,
Well, they're
right?
selling themselves on the fact that they don't have to do that. I'm
Yeah.
too busy to sell. Okay, well, you just effectively sold yourself on the fact that you're happy with your business going nowhere. You've
Right.
sold yourself, closed the deal that you are fine with not doing the work necessary to grow your business. If you want to be busy, go for it. But if you want to go to the bank, you have to do the work.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like, I think people who are starting their own business, if they're coming out of corporate, they've had the job and they say, look, I now want to turn into a consultant or I want to pursue my passion. I think this is pretty common,
Yes.
is that they view it as they're stepping into a franchise, that something is already running and all they need to do is make the subs or
Yes.
right? All they have to do is make the pizzas and people are just going to come flock to them. But it's really not that way. I
Right.
mean, is that something you see as well?
I see it all the time. Or they adopt the moniker that I don't sell, I don't need to sell, I'll just serve. I'm a
Mm,
servant. I
yep.
get and they but there's nothing wrong with serving as long as you're selling with it. You
Hmm.
can serve and you can sell. So I use serving and selling like the infinity symbol. It
Wow.
crosses over, it overlaps, it intertwines, it goes together, it's complementary. If you do one without the other, you confuse the hell out of people. If you only serve, but you don't sell, you make people scratch their head and say, what a waste of time. I
Mm,
don't even know what that person does. Or he or she didn't articulate their value and how they can help me. All they wanted to do was serve and be a servant. And there's nothing wrong with serving, but there is something wrong when you serve so much, you leave people completely drunk from confusion. So if you're overserving and underselling, you'll pretty much know it because you're not closing business. People are saying, thank you, but I'll get back to you. That's a little expensive, or I'm not ready to buy. And they run and lie and hide from you
mm,
because all you did was serve. You
yeah.
forgot to do the other part, which was help and lead and guide and get people to a place where they called you for the reason they called you.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. So like I am a big believer in the servant mindset, but
Yes.
in all throughout the years of selling, like I worked for a publicly held company, we had to provide our forecast. There was no way I could go to that meeting and say, well, I'm just a servant. I don't, I don't really sell, right? I'm in sales, folks. I
Yes.
can serve, but I need to ask for the order.
Yes.
And this is where you got to serve, but it's just like in the analogy I use is a server in a fine dining restaurant. They're not just serving water. They
Right.
eventually say, would you like to order now?
Right.
So, and that's really what many are missing is
They
that they're
are.
missing that, would you like to order now? So how
And
do they get into that from the serving side? Because you mentioned it's all connected.
yeah,
I
yeah.
love that. So tell me, how do you transition from the selling to serving to selling?
So I think that, not think, I know because both are necessary. Is shifting that mindset from, oh, if I only just serve them, they'll eventually pull out their credit card or say yes to me. If I just keep serving them, I keep sending them articles and information, and I just keep inundating them with all the stuff that I can do for them, that eventually they will buy from you. And that's not the case. So the selling part that comes in with the serving is when you're having maybe a discovery call, an initial meeting, that face to face or online first conversation about, hey, I may need to hire you, or I want to find out more about what you do and if you can help my organization or myself. And it's being able to weave in and out of that serving and selling mindset by asking the great questions that get under the hood of what's really at the heart of why people are talking to you.
Mm.
No one calls a plumber unless they need a plumber, right?
Right.
Nobody calls a divorce attorney unless they're really considering a divorce. So you have to be able to go in there and go deep into that conversation. Why now? What's going on? Tell me a little bit of this. Oftentimes, when I'm talking to a woman who's ready to go through a divorce like yourself, we find this or certain things. You want to impart insight as well as that serving and selling and insight. And again, they all move and weave together. So you have to be able to sell the value that you provide, right? If
Mm.
you're not selling the value you provide, but someone else is, they're going to go to that person.
Yeah. Somebody that has clarity and is not
Right.
afraid to ask for the order. Right.
That's right.
Yeah.
And even one step before that, it's not even asking for the order. It's being able to say, here's how I work with people in your
Mm.
situation without ever having to use those exact words. But it's how you step in, connect the dots for people so they see the connection. Then when you say, well, how do you feel about moving forward? Are you at the place right now where you're ready to make a decision? Do we need to talk again? Because asking for the business isn't always, are you ready to sign the contract? It could be, are you ready to take the next step in this process? Are you ready for what would look like maybe another conversation with the rest of your team? But it's moving it along in the right progression, not pushing someone from behind to make a decision faster than they're ready. It's truly understanding where someone is and moving with them through that. You could never make anyone make a decision faster than they're ready because that's pressure. You can do it, but you'll piss them off, they'll hate you, or they'll cancel the order if you
There you
do.
go. Yeah.
So it's about being in alignment, not only with yourself, but also the person that you're talking to. And there's that finesse there. It isn't, oh, I'll just get on the phone and talk to someone and they'll buy from me. There's these nuances of communication that draws people in and then communication that pushes people away. And we can talk about that later as well. There are some specific language patterns that draw people in and ones that make people go, I don't know about this person. I don't think so.
Right. Right.
And they shut you down right
Yeah.
then and there. You might
Yeah.
have 30 more minutes on the call with them, but they've already made a decision. You're not it.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. And you're kind of left in the bag, not knowing what went wrong.
That's it.
Right. Yeah. So, all right. So we've got this side of it, which I really enjoy, is where you're talking about that as a servant, you're in the best position to serve that person. So if you're not asking for the order and explaining how you work with them as you described and how you work with people and making the ask for the order, you're really doing a disservice. Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And also, if you're not getting to the real reason why you're on the phone with someone or on a Zoom call, if someone calls you and just says there's a water leak, okay, you need to ask a lot of questions
Mm.
and good questions to find out where it's coming from. How long is the problem? Is it big enough to even fix? Sometimes a little drip people could live with for 25 years.
Yeah.
If it becomes a big drip, there's a different impact that's happening at that time. So we have to be willing. We talked about this before we went on the air. Stop snorkeling and go scuba diving with your customers. Go deep, find out, ask those questions, sometimes uncomfortable questions. Sometimes you have to be a little uncomfortable for them to tell you the truth of where they really are.
Yeah.
And that's the difference of people that say, oh, I hate to sell. Yeah, you hate the surface stuff. You probably hate the way sales used to be, not the way sales is now. Sales done today, sales done well, is the most kindest thing you can do for someone to help them either get what they need from you or give them a referral to someone else. That's the kindest thing you can do for someone.
Yeah. So true. And so, like, on that side of the coin, we have what you described, and then we have the other side, which to me is like, I'm still blown away by people trying to sell without doing any research, any knowledge whatsoever, the connect and pitch. I had a person recently ask me if I ever considered being an author. And I went, it takes, I'm thinking it takes one sentence
Yep.
on my LinkedIn profile to see that I'm an author and I have a book holding books. It's like, are you kidding me? Then
Yep.
I get to the chain of messages from the same person. And then the last one was where I hit disconnect was, have you given up on writing a book? I mean, it takes no time, folks, to do
Yep.
just a tiny shred of research so that you can have intelligent conversations with people. So, is there any helping of these people, or should we just say, you know what, forget about them? We're just going to go help the people who are just, struggling with viewing themselves in sales.
Well, I like to have a little fun with some of those people.
Okay.
And I'm sure, Harry, you're a hell of a lot nicer than me, but I'm a Jersey girl.
Oh, no, I'm from the Northeast, so I have
Okay.
sarcasm in my blood. Just that's all.
Born in the Bronx, grew up in New Jersey. So when I get an email that says that someone can help me grow my business or triple my sales. And so I'll let the first email come through and I wait for the second one to see how hard they're pressing on that issue when they haven't looked at my profile. And I will say something snarky to the effect of, I don't regret a lot of things in my life, but I do regret the day that I connected with you. And I will say, how could you email me this email when this is what I do for a living? So then I turn it around and I sell to them. Sounds like you could use my program. Sounds
Oh,
like
nice.
you need the sales clinic. Sounds like you need to check in right away and get some help, because if you think this approach works, you're crazy. Let's talk if you'd like. And
Mm.
and of course, no one ever takes me up on that but I think we just either need to play with them or delete them, either one.
Yeah.
But because I've gotten some great emails from people who, hey, Liz, I looked at your profile, or, oh my gosh, you wrote a book on X, Y, and Z, or, oh my God, your video that you said about this, that, and that. They reference that and they say, I'm having trouble with, or I'm not sure if this would align with what you're doing, but they say something. This is the difference, Harry. The message was written to me, not at me.
Right.
There is a huge difference in the sound and the way that it lands when a message feels like it was structured just for me, instead of the masses. So that's where people need to look at their messaging. Does it feel like it's going to land as if I wrote a letter right to Harry, or does it feel like I wrote it to Harry and Sally and John and
Yeah.
Betty and right?
Exactly.
So that's where language gets in the way. If it doesn't land well, it's not going anywhere.
Exactly. So this type of selling, what is a good word for it? This type of
It's really
pitching.
marketing.
Yeah.
It's marketing
Yeah.
to me. They're trying to market themselves. So people will call it bad selling, but it's really not. It's
Yeah.
crappy marketing.
Yeah. Okay. I like it. Yeah. I'm just thinking of, if that's the perception that people have of what sales is, I don't like it either. Right.
Same
So,
here.
okay. So for those of you who think that's what selling is, Liz and I are on the same page, but it's not
Absolutely.
selling.
That's
Okay.
not selling.
We,
No.
we have an agreement. And so when you were sharing that great insight, I had a thought and I just went back. I got to be listening, stop thinking. And I forgot what it was, but it was really brilliant.
Okay.
So you mentioned, we'll go back to that. I know it'll resurface the next time
Okay.
you say something, but we'll talk about language, because the whole concept of, like, I think this is the disconnect in selling. Another disconnect is people feel that if they say the right thing, if they get some well-rehearsed lines down, that oh yeah, I know, it had to do with the scuba diving.
Okay.
They get some well-rehearsed lines down, that's good enough.
That's it.
But
Yep.
talk to me about that and how that whole thing with language works with that as well.
Well, it's silly to think that a couple of crutch phrases or a couple of sayings, or you have one fabulous closing line, is going to completely make people melt into your arms. It's crazy to think that that is what selling is today. So I often, probably every day of my life, a few times a day, I talk about language landmines, word bombs, and crutch sayings and phrase grenades. And I've named them all bombs and landmines and grenades because these words can cause your communication to blow up in your face, literally. Because when people read these words and phrases that have been around 30, 40, in some ways 50, 60 years, all you do is take someone back 30, 40, 50, 60 years back to the old way of selling.
Mm.
So you say, I hate to sell. I don't like selling. I don't want to be salesy. But then you drag in an old school phrase or phrase grenade, like some of the ones I'll give you an example of. Then you're completely incongruent. You're saying, I don't want to sell and be salesy, but I'll use language that makes me sound just like that. So, I mean, that's so incongruent. So that's another reason why people don't buy from you, because you already have the mindset that you don't like to sell. And now you're using language that people don't like to hear. And then you wonder why nobody buys from you, but then you get to blame it on everything else but yourself. And a lot of times I see people, they'll say, Liz, I don't understand why people don't get back to me. I don't understand why I have great meetings with people. I met with someone last week for a hour. I shared so much information. They blew me off, ghosted me, never heard back from them. And then I dig a little deeper and I ask them a few questions. What did you say? What did you say in your quote unquote follow up? How did you try to re-engage them? What did you do at the end of the meeting that is either keeping them engaged or pushing them away? So there's a lot of things that can go wrong in a sales conversation, but oftentimes it's the language people use after they've had that one-on-one conversation that they deem fabulous, great, value-filled, amazing. When the potential client is thinking, that was waste of time. And when people don't get back to you, you have to ask yourself, what did I do to cause that? Because if your conversation was free and flowing and beautiful and generic and authentic and open and aligned, they're not afraid to get back to you to tell you the truth. When people don't get back to you, it's because you did something to them where they're in their head, they're saying, I'm not calling that putz back. I'm not going to get back to that jerk. I didn't like the way she treated me or talked to me. But they don't really know what turned them off, but it was something that you did or said in that conversation that they wrote you off.
Yeah.
So
Really good. I'm sorry. I don't
it
mean to interrupt you. Go.
and that's okay.
Yeah.
And Harry, it happens all the time. So whenever I am working with a new client or a company, I will always have them send me as many messages as they can, from follow-up messages to prospecting messages, so I can get a flavor of what they're doing or not doing in their process that is causing people to blow them off or ghost them. What is causing someone to get all the way through the process and then never talk to them again? And typically when I'm scrutinizing that, there's a lot of words in there that are watering down their impact. It's diluting their message. It's undermining their effectiveness. It's decreasing their credibility, because when they have that first initial meeting, and then someone says, yeah, all right, let's continue the conversation. Or, yeah, you know what, Harry, send me a proposal. Or let me take a look at that. Just send it over. But meanwhile, that person, is maybe 50-50 or maybe 70-30. 70, I don't know about this person. I don't think so. Could be 30% interested. We don't know. But then you send an email that says, I know you're busy, so I don't want to waste your time, but I just thought I would follow up or touch base or reach out and check in. I know your plate is full. I don't want to keep bothering you. And now you have this needy, desperate, push me away tone that is not strong and powerful. It doesn't draw anyone in. It actually pushes them away. You're apologizing for doing your job. But if you did your job well on that first phone call, you never have to apologize for getting back to anyone, because what you're in essence doing is continuing a beautiful conversation that you already had. It had so much value in the first one that someone's willing to keep that volley going. So I use the example of a tennis match. You send an email, think of it as lobbing the tennis ball over the net. You send a great email over the net. If it comes back to you, now you know you're in business. You're talking to someone and they're willing to volley. But if you send an email and it hits the net, and then you send another one and it hits the net, and you say, I didn't mean to bother you again, but I thought I would follow up one more time. I'm not sure if you got my last 27 emails, and that you've lost momentum. You're giving away all of your power because the strong upfront conversation you didn't have in that first initial meeting isn't strong enough to keep that volley going. So when you use phrases like, I'm sorry to bother you, I hope you had a good weekend, I hope this email finds you well. I hope everyone is hearing a theme here that almost every email in their inbox sounds just like that. So why would you set yourself up to sound like everyone else and be like everyone else and be treated like everyone else versus changing your language in your sales conversation and then have that same language follow you through the follow up, through that next step of the conversation?
Wow. That was so good. And you may have to rewind and revisit this because that was amazing. A question that comes to mind, Liz. So I love the volleying, the back and forth, the great conversation. There's so much to go on there.
Yep.
But when you're selling old school sales mode, not that you're doing that, but if a person is doing that,
Okay.
prospect, the potential buyer may just be very polite
That
and
too.
they listen. Doesn't mean they're interested, but they're just really polite to people and they're listening. And seller can walk away and say, I've got a live one.
Right.
They may let me make it through all of my 45 minutes. I gave all of this data. I told them incredible stories, and they said they'd be interested in a proposal only because you said, I will leave, but would you be interested if I sent you a proposal? Right? It has to end somewhere. It's implied that the I will leave part. So just on that case, right? And in that scenario where a person is doing all the talking,
Yes.
how do you help them say, look, just because someone's polite doesn't mean they're interested? Where do we go with that?
Well, I would say that if someone is just being polite and you can't pick up on that and they're not sharing their deepest, darkest issues with you and they're snorkeling with you, not scuba diving with you, and then you offer to do a proposal, shame on you. Shame on you for wasting your time and their time by sending them a proposal and then following up with them 9 times saying, not sure if you got my proposal, thought I'd follow up one more time. Hey, I thought I would touch base with you one more time. Did you have a chance to look at that proposal? So, shame on you for missing all the beautiful cues that if you got out of your head and into your body, stop selling from your head and start selling in with your heart and your soul, you would pick up on that. You'd be able to look at someone and say, "You know what, Harry, I'm picking up on this," or, you said something earlier and I'm not sure I'm really feeling that the need is truly here to do a proposal, or feels a little early for me to do a proposal. I don't have all the information I need. And if you're just shoving a proposal down someone's throat, you missed all the beautiful cues and being in the moment with someone who needs help, but they've already decided you're not the one that's going to give it to them.
Yeah, exactly. James Muir, I think, wrote this about people having to have an emotional investment of some
Yeah.
sort in the sale.
Right.
Taking a proposal is no emotional investment.
Zero.
Opening up to somebody,
Yeah.
that's the emotional investment. If they're
That's
not
it.
opening up, telling you what's going on, like you say, your deepest, darkest secrets here,
Yep.
then there's no investment in there. So that's
Zero.
why they're ignoring your emails. You've done nothing to open them up to see that they're invested. They took the proposal so you would go away, is
That's
really
it.
what it comes down to.
That's exactly it. And for people who say, I don't understand why people don't get back to me. They want to blame the potential client when
Yeah.
in fact, they are creating that scenario each and every time. They're setting themselves up every time to get blown off, brushed off, ghosted, and completely dismissed.
Yeah, exactly. And this is where this whole concept of leading with product or leading with whatever it is you're selling, if it's a
Yep.
product or service, if that's what you're doing, if you're talking about that and not talking about what's important to the client or the prospect, then you're missing a huge opportunity. And that's the vast. So you got the people who are really servant minded, who don't want to ask for the order. Then you have these other people who are all about selling their product or service and can't ask or won't ask a simple business question
Right.
because they're afraid the person might respond with an answer that they're not capable of handling,
That's it. They don't want
right?
to look bad.
Yeah,
right? They're in there to look
exactly.
good and to sell something. And so there's a lot of messiness right now going on with sales and selling, a lot of messiness. And I hope I live long enough to see this messiness corrected. But it is up to each and every one of us. If we are in that forward facing, maybe you don't call yourself a salesperson. You sell a service, but you're selling that service. So you love what you do and you love to do the service that you're selling. You get to do both. But I lost my train of thought. What was I saying? Oh, we have to the messiness. Yeah.
Yeah.
You think that you could just download a PDF with the 10 questions to ask every client, or you could make $2,000 an hour by just using this template. Stop believing that there's a quick fix out there. There is a way to sell that aligns with who you are, how how you show up, the way you want to be, the way you want to be viewed, the way you want people to open up to you. But first you have to know yourself to be able to know which direction to go in. If you're just out for the sale and that's all you care about, then you can hop off of this podcast right now, because that's not what neither of us teach, right? We don't teach that. It's
So
about
true.
knowing yourself at such a level that you know what the questions you're willing to ask, how deep you want to go with someone, how much quote unquote discomfort can you both be in to get to the resolution to make sure that you're helping someone, and to do it in such a way where you're I say I always use the words I'm totally committed, but I'm completely unattached, meaning
Mm,
I'm committed to the conversation you and I are having right now, but I am unattached right now to sounding brilliant or looking good. I'm completely unattached the same way I'm in my sales conversations. I want to be completely in this, but there's going to be a point where I might have to detach because there isn't a sale here. There isn't a reason for us to keep talking. I haven't found it. You're not ready to do anything, or you may not need me. But I'd rather be able to unplug that instead of keeping the toaster plugged in and just burning the toast, right? There's no
right.
gonna just keep it in there. And so a lot of people do that. They keep going down the path versus detaching and saying, this really isn't a good fit. I don't know why I'm dragging this person through my emails when this really isn't a good fit. So we have to stop doing that. That's where selling gets messy. That's where
Mm.
people don't like sales, because I sometimes I think to myself, are they not getting the message when you're talking to someone like the way you're talking? How could you not pick up that someone is literally turning you off? They're lowering the volume of what you're saying, and you're not seeing that. You're just talking at them, and it's going right through them.
Totally. All right. So I would be remiss. This is so good, by
Okay.
the way. That I mean, I love it, but I know I have to go into where you helped me out incredibly a few years ago with this line of not that there was a line, but this thought of picking up from where you left off. And to me, that is such a huge game saver or game changer. Excuse me. There's my nervousness again. The game changing thought is to go back to where you were in the previous conversation, and versus all of the slimy following up
Yeah,
and weirdness that goes on. So can we talk about that for a little bit?
absolutely. That is
Yeah.
one of my top three things I
Okay.
appreciate talking about. So when someone says, hey, I'm just following up, hey, I'm just touching base, all of that says to me that there's some sort of well, first of all, when you use that language, what the potential client is already thinking, you may be saying, hey, I'm just following up, but what they hear is, hey, Ann, let's get the show started. Come on, you called me. We had a nice conversation. Let's get the ball rolling. Or, you know what, Dan, what's going on? What's the delay? Time is ticking. Let this party started. That's what they're hearing when you send a message that says, hey, I'm just following up. I wanted to know if you got the proposal. I wanted to know if you're ready to make a decision. And so think about what you're saying, but what they're actually hearing versus sending a message. Well, even before you send a follow up message, I teach people how to talk about follow up before you actually even do the act of follow up. So, what that means is, let's say you and I had a conversation, Harry. I called to talk to you about your training. And at the end of the conversation, you might, or I might say to you, Harry, I know earlier you mentioned that you're still in the process of looking at some other companies and you're not making a decision until maybe sometime next year. But the last thing I want to do is be one of those people who just dumps follow-up message after follow-up message in your inbox. Let's talk about how you and I will stay connected. What's the best way for us to pick up where we left off when we do connect? How would you like us to keep this verbal exchange going? And I'm just giving a bunch of examples, not
Yep.
all of this. And so you're honoring that other person in such a way that most people don't. Most people don't stop and say, look, I know you get 1,000 emails a day because so do I. And the last thing I want to do is bloat your inbox with another one that says, just following up, just touching base, just reaching out and checking in. I'd rather talk about what is our next best step right now so that I can honor that and make a note of that. So this person, I had a couple of people over the years say, oh, I like that. Could you teach my people how to talk like that? And I like it too because it makes me feel like I'm still in charge, not control, but I'm in charge of how this conversation lays out in the future versus having the door slammed in my face. So someone might say, I appreciate that, Liz. We are looking at some other things. I know I said we wanted to get something next year, but in all likelihood, it might be until April. All right, so why don't we do this? Or what do you suggest? Or how about this? And before you know it, you're having a conversation about follow up, which means you never have to say, I'm just following up, touching base, reaching out, and checking in, because you've already decided how you're going to do that. And the big one, Harry, why do you have to announce that you're following up when you're actually doing it? I'm just taking a breath. Oh, I'm going to exhale now, Harry. I'm going to take it. Why would I tell you that I'm following up? I'm doing the act of following up. You don't have to announce it with a big drum roll saying, I'm just following up. Yeah, I know you're doing it. So again, waste of words versus saying, hey, Anne, in our last conversation or when we spoke in July, you and I talked about, or we conversed about, or you shared with me X, Y, and Z and the need to do A, B, and C by Tuesday. And then your conversation is all about what you guys decided to do in this email. And then the conversation, I can't tell anybody what to say because I don't know what happened in that previous meeting. But that's the meat of your message is what happened then and what you agreed to at the end of that. You and I agreed that we would talk this week to see where you're at, possibly even bring a few more people into the conversation. But you're really just getting a sense of where you left off and how do I pick up the baton now and start running with it?
Outstanding. I've got to go one other word, the L word, because I would love to work with you. I would love to sell you my stuff. I would love to have a conversation with you. So tell me what
All
you're
right.
doing there, Liz.
All right, let's bring it home with the L word. So there are lots of troublemaker words, dozens more doozies of language that have probably already cost you thousands or hundreds of $1,000s this year by participating in the L word. And the L word, first of all, makes you come across overeager, self-serving. It's all about you. When you say, I would love to, I'd love to jump on a quick call. I'd love to grab lunch with you. I'd love to set up a Zoom meeting. I'd love to set up some time where I can tell you all about my services. I'd love the chance to work with you. I'd love the opportunity to serve you. And I can go on and on and on and on. The minute you drop the L word in that way, I would love to, and then you tell them what you would love to do, that is the most self-serving, salesy language that you could use. It comes across a little too needy, a little too excited, a whole lot desperate, because it's all about what you want. So the distinction here is when you say I would love is making a demand versus making a request. It's what you want and what you would love to do. It's not collaborative. It's not inviting. It's all about what Harry wants. I would love to. And when you say that to someone in their head, they're thinking, yeah, of course you'd love to set up a meeting with me. You're trying to sell me something, right? So that people send countless emails with that in there. And then they wonder why, I wonder why nobody's getting back to me. I would love to sit down and talk to you. How about, are you open to a conversation? Hi, Harry. What does your schedule look like next week to jump on a call regarding A, B, and C? What do you feel about?
Mm.
Don't tell someone what you want to do to them. Invite them into what works for them. Give them a chance to say, you know what? That does work. When somebody doesn't respond to, and I would love to set up an appointment with you, it's because you didn't give them a chance to say anything else but nothing. You didn't give them an opportunity. But when you ask me a question versus telling me what you want, no matter how nicely you say it, you come across so self serving, and no one wants to do business with someone who's self serving. And I know it's not, I know people aren't doing this because they want to be self serving. They're doing it because everyone else is doing it. And just because everyone else is doing it doesn't mean it works. It just means it's popular. It just means it's old school. It just means that everybody's doing it. So why shouldn't I? So it's how it's received and how it lands makes all the difference. So just because something is popular and just because everyone else is doing it doesn't mean you should. This is your opportunity today to strike that from your language, because no one cares what you would love. They care about themselves and what they would love. Ta-da!
Wow. I would love to keep going for another hour or two. Phenomenal. There's just so much good content. Liz, where can people find more of your brilliance, my dear?
Oh, yeah, they can go right to my website, which is lizwendling.com. And on Amazon, same thing. Type in my name, my books will come up. And with me on LinkedIn. I'd love to see you do that. Your connection request. See, even I have to catch myself.
Yeah. And
So
you do.
your connection request will be responded to immediately. But and because it's such a habit for all of us. Even when you say, I love your blouse, or I love your hair, I love your backdrop. Who is that about too, Harry? That's all about us. Versus your background is beautiful. Your home is lovely. Your car is fabulous. Your tie looks great with that shirt versus I love your tie. I love your boots. I love your hair. So we have to stop being so self-serving and start serving in a way that serves others.
Oh my goodness. You have to, we cannot end on that note. That requires a little explanation. I mean, because I'm guilty of this,
Okay.
but you have helped me, and you don't know, but I replayed in my mind this podcast you and I were on a couple of years ago.
Uh-huh.
And you're an immense help about bringing me back to the conversation, getting past the I love, or I'd love to do so, which I could go on for that one because I love that conversation as well. But when you just said, I love your tie, or I love your haircut, or I love whatever, I love your background, you're touching on something there with the I word. And I
Yes.
just picked up on it a little bit as to why that is not the best way to compliment someone. So tell me what you're thinking so I can sleep at night.
Okay. So when you say I love your blouse, or you say, "Oh, I love your doggy," or "I love your car," all someone can really say is thank you, right? It doesn't really land on them. It's like, "Oh, thanks," versus stopping someone and saying, "Your session today was terrific," or "Your book was so amazing," or "Your kids are so darling." And it lands so beautiful on the other person. It's received in such a different way. You can almost see someone's face light up when you say, your home is beautiful, or your children are so special, versus I love your kids. Oh, thanks. And I had a man's, the first time I spoke about this was about 12 years ago. I was doing a speaking engagement and a man came up to me and he said, I never looked at it that way. He says, but I'm going to try it this week and I'm going to report back to you. And he said he got in the elevator with someone that works in his company, but he never knew how to have a conversation with her. She had beautiful red hair. And he said, I wanted so many times to tell her that I love your red hair, but in an in an elevator, it'd be kind of weird. So he said, I tried it and I made it about her. And he said to me, I told her, you have such stunning red hair. And I've always
Mm.
wanted to tell you that, but it just looks so beautiful. And he said, she stepped back not because it was weird. She stepped back because she felt it. And she looked at him, touched her heart and said, thank you. And he said, I was convinced that that worked because he got feedback immediately that if he said, I love your hair, she would have just said, thank you. She wouldn't have stopped, touched her heart and said, oh, thank you. But when he said, your hair is so beautiful, I've always wanted to tell you that, but I'm doing it right now. And he got the proof right away. So I'm telling everybody, try it. Go do that to someone and watch what happens when you say it from your heart. Watch how it lands on someone else. And imagine doing that in every email, every message, that your messaging is landing exactly how you want it to land. Imagine that. Imagine the sales that come in when you take the time to do that.
I am imagining and visualizing, and this has been a blast. Jam-packed with value. Liz Wendling on the Sales Made Easy podcast. You are the best.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to Sales Made Easy. If you found value in our conversations, please subscribe and leave a review. Our goal is to provide practical strategies for growing your business while staying true to your values. Remember, success in sales is about serving your clients. Serve first, and the selling will follow.